The Chernobyl exclusion zone, a scar on the face of the earth. 38 years have passed since the disaster, yet silence reigns. Buildings stand empty, reclaimed by nature, a ghost town frozen in time. But life, tenacious and resilient, finds a way. Vegetation flourishes, painting the landscape in vibrant hues of green and gold. Animals once gone now roam freely. Dr. Eric Quinn, a young ecologist, ventured into this silent world. Armed with scientific curiosity, he sought to document the resurgence of life in this irradiated wilderness. His tool of choice, a state-of-the-art drone capturing the unseen, the forgotten. Day after day he explored, marveling at nature's resilience. Little did he know that fate had a shocking discovery in store for him. A discovery that would pit him against the clock in a desperate fight for survival. Eric launched the drone from a clearing, its rotors kicking up a whirlwind of dust and leaves. The air buzzed with the low hum of the machine as it climbed steadily, its camera feed streaming live to the monitor in Eric's hands. The forest came alive on the screen, a tapestry of greens, browns, and the occasional splash of color from wildflowers. He steered the drone towards a former logging site, now reclaimed by nature. A sudden flicker on the monitor caught Eric's eye, a flash of movement in the undergrowth. He paused the drone's flight, maneuvering it carefully for a closer look. His heart pounded in his chest, anticipation mixing with a sense of foreboding. He zoomed in the camera, the image sharpening to reveal a clearing. There, amidst the tangle of fallen logs and overgrown vegetation, lay a young brown bear cub, caught in a crude metal trap. The cub struggled weakly, its small frame trembling with fear and exertion. A wave of nausea washed over Eric. He had stumbled upon a scene of heartbreaking cruelty. The trap, a rusty, barbaric contraption, was clearly designed for larger game. The fact that this young cub was caught in its clutches spoke volumes about the indiscriminate nature of poaching. Anger surged within him, followed by a steely determination to help the helpless creature. But what could he do? He was alone, miles from the nearest ranger station. Eric knew he had to act fast. The cub's whimpers were growing weaker. It was clearly exhausted from its struggle and in desperate need of water and medical attention. He scanned the surrounding area on his monitor, hoping for a sign of the cub's mother. His heart sank as he realized the awful truth. The cub was alone, abandoned to its fate. The drone hovered silently overhead, a witness to the cub's plight. Eric felt a surge of helplessness. He was a scientist, not a rescuer. Yet he couldn't turn his back on the creature's suffering. As if on cue, a guttural growl echoed through the silent forest. Eric's blood ran cold. The mother bear had returned. On the monitor, he saw her emerge from the undergrowth, a hulking silhouette against the bright green backdrop. She moved with a measured tread, her massive head held low as she sniffed the air, catching the scent of her trapped offspring. Her dark eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and primal rage, settled on the whimpering cub. A low moan escaped the mother bear's throat, a sound filled with anguish and despair. She approached the trap cautiously, her powerful claws scraping against the dry earth. The cub, sensing its mother's presence, renewed its struggles, its whimpers turning into frantic cries. The mother bear circled the trap, sniffing at the metal jaws that held her cub captive. Eric watched, mesmerized and terrified, as the scene unfolded before his eyes. He knew that if he interfered, he would be risking his life. The mother bear's frustration grew. She paced restlessly around the trap, her roars echoing through the silent forest. Her attempts to free her cub were becoming increasingly frantic. Eric watched, his heart pounding in his chest, as the tension in the clearing crackled like static electricity. He knew he had to act fast, but one wrong move could have disastrous consequences. Suddenly a new sound pierced the forest stillness, the distinct crackle of a twig snapping underfoot. Eric froze, his eyes darting to the edge of the clearing. Two figures emerged from the trees, their faces obscured by camouflage netting. Poachers. They moved with a practiced ease, their eyes scanning the undergrowth, their hands resting casually on the rifles slung across their backs. Eric's initial fear gave way to a surge of anger. These men were the reason the cub was in danger in the first place. He needed to find another way. Eric's mind raced, adrenaline surging through his veins. He needed a distraction, something to draw the poacher's attention away from the cub and its mother. His gaze fell on the drone hovering silently above the clearing. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance he had. He steered the drone away from the clearing, sending it high above the treetops. Then, with a deep breath, he put his plan into action. He swooped the drone down from its vantage point, sending it buzzing toward the poachers. The poachers, startled by the sudden intrusion, spun around, their hands instinctively reaching for their rifles. Eric maneuvered the drone erratically, buzzing it around their heads like an angry hornet. The poachers, caught off guard, stumbled back, their eyes narrowed against the drone's insistent buzzing. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed through the forest. Eric's heart skipped a beat as he pulled the drone up sharply, narrowly avoiding the bullet. The poachers, their bloodlust aroused, were no longer hesitant. They took aim again, their rifles spitting fire and fury. Eric, his fingers flying across the drone's controller, steered the drone in a series of evasive maneuvers. The drone, battered but still airborne, became a beacon of hope in the chaos. Its presence had bought Eric precious time to contact the authorities. He had managed to send out a distress signal, along with his GPS coordinates. Now, all he could do was hope that help would arrive in time. He had to keep the poachers distracted until the authorities arrived. The arrival of the wildlife management team was like a scene from an action movie. 2 trucks roared into the clearing, sirens blaring, lights flashing. The poachers, outnumbered and outgunned, surrendered without a fight. They were quickly disarmed and bundled into the back of one of the trucks. With the immediate threat contained, the team turned their attention to the trapped cub. The veterinarian, a kind-faced woman, approached the cub cautiously. The mother bear, sensing no threat, allowed the veterinarian to approach her injured offspring. The veterinarian worked swiftly, administering a sedative to the cub. With the cub safely sedated, the team set about freeing it from the trap. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the cub was free. The cub, swaddled in a soft blanket, was carefully placed in a transport cage. The veterinarian, her face etched with fatigue but her eyes shining with triumph, climbed into the back of the truck. The mother bear, her anxiety palpable, paced alongside the truck as it slowly pulled away. Back at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, the cub was given a thorough examination. The veterinarian, her touch gentle yet firm, checked its vital signs. The veterinarian cleaned its wounds. The veterinarian administered antibiotics. The cub, though clearly traumatized, seemed to sense that it was in good hands. It nuzzled against the veterinarian's hand, its dark eyes filled with a mixture of fear and trust. The veterinarian vowed to do everything in her power to ensure its survival. Under the veterinarian's expert care, the cub's wounds healed and its strength returned. But even as the cub thrived, the question of its future lingered in the air. The Chernobyl exclusion zone, once a symbol of human devastation, had become an unexpected haven for wildlife. In the absence of human interference, nature had rebounded with a vengeance. Bears, wolves, lynx, and other species now roamed freely in this radioactive wilderness. The story of the rescued cub was a powerful reminder of the resilience of nature. Eric, haunted by what he had witnessed, became a staunch advocate for the protection of the Chernobyl exclusion zone. He shared the story of the rescued cub with anyone who would listen. He spoke at conferences, wrote articles, and lobbied governments, urging them to recognize the ecological importance of the zone. His efforts gradually began to bear fruit. The story of the rescued cub resonated with people around the world. Donations poured in, funding research projects, conservation efforts, and educational programs. The day finally came when the cub, now fully recovered and sporting a shiny new tracking collar, was deemed ready for release back into the wild. The veterinarian, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and pride, watched as the cage door swung open. The cub, after a moment of hesitation, bounded out into the forest. The tracking collar would allow the researchers to monitor its movements. The story of the rescued cub had a profound impact on Eric's life. It had taught him the importance of courage, compassion, and the interconnectedness of all living things. It had also ignited in him a passion for conservation. He knew that the fight to protect the Chernobyl exclusion zone was far from over, but he was determined to continue the fight, inspired by the memory of a small brown bear cub. The Chernobyl exclusion zone stands as a testament to both the destructive power of humanity and the remarkable resilience of nature.